What's up, guys? Zaid here, and today we're here with MeerrGames on YouTube, right?
Yeah,
MeerrGames
Mirror
on
Games.
YouTube and Twitch, and she just top 16 the Detroit Regionals last weekend playing Adamancipator, and is going to show us some of the combos today and kind of how to play with this deck with optimal hands and unoptimal hands. You have anything to say before we get into it?
Just that I've been playing this deck a long time, not necessarily this version, but like since it came out. So I've seen it when it was cracked with Black Dragon. I tried playing it after the ban, and then I've kind of messed with it ever since. So I have a lot of heart for this deck.
You're a veteran on it.
Yeah.
So you want to jump right in then?
Yeah. So this is definitely like would be a cracked hand for this current version of the deck. Quacky Guardian is your nib protection. So if you open with that and Researcher, which can summon herself if there's a rock at all, then you're pretty much good to go. Seeker can sometimes be dead in hand. He has to have an Adamancipator monster, but that's why if you see both of those, or him and the other one, you're kind of good to go. And then we'll see how these guys come in. So first of all, you want to start with your nib blocker. So you just normal summon Quacky. The Adamancipators are not inherent, so you do have to declare their effect to special, so they can get side framed. But most people just kind of let them come from hand because they're like, oh, if it's rocks, maybe they're going to go into something a little bit more intense later on. And some people who know the deck know that there's quite a bit of just gas with it, so they want to wait till later on to hit anything. But normally I'll declare Emancipator Researcher, or if I feel like it's an opponent who might have a lot of hand traps, I might summon Seeker right away before declaring her, because if there's no Adamancipator card on board, then he can't summon out anyway. So she
So
gets
like an
side framed.
ogre or a gamma would hurt a lot on there.
Yeah, exactly. So if she gets ogre to gamma, then he's stuck in hand now. So normally I'll go ahead and bring him out as soon as I can, because he is the hardest one to bring out. So then you declare her. We'll do the dueling book. And that's a pretty good hand. This is where you have to start getting decisive. So this whole deck is about making decisions on what you excavated. These three are, you can't, it has to be level 4 or lower. That's
So
not a rock. Go ahead.
I thought you could summon Nib for a sec. I didn't realize it had to be 4 or lower. Is that the same stipulation on all the Adamancipators, is 4 or lower?
Only the main deck guys. So Raptite, you can actually summon Nib off of it.
Ah,
Yeah. But the main deck monsters, it has to be a level 4 or lower, and it has to be a non-tuner, so you can't summon the other guys out off of it either.
oh, I see.
Yeah. So then we have our two choices here. Dragite, if it's summoned off of an Adamancipator card, you get to draw one. Doki, the idea is based on our hand. We would be pitching Supplier off of Doki, so you kind of have to decide, do I want to do that, or do I want to just draw? This hand's already kind of cracked, so I would probably go for the draw.
If you were to
Or,
Doki, what would you get? Probably just like Researcher or whatever the level 4 one is, Analyzer.
yeah, so I would dump Supplier and then get Analyzer off of Doki.
But in this hand, since you already have like straight gas, you probably don't need the Analyzer summon because you're giving up Supplier,
Yeah,
which is like an extender anyways.
exactly. So wanting to chain block later on is why we kind of want to hang on to this. And the knowledge that if we don't get Analyzer now, we can probably get her later off of Raptite.
Hmm.
So then special summoning it in defense. The guys let you decide if you want in defense or attack. Raptite doesn't, but it's 0 attack, so there's no reason you'd be summoning it in attack. But then it's a separate effect to declare to draw one.
Don't forget to put the 4 banished back on the bottom of the deck.
Yes, thank you. This is the dueling book that I always struggle with. So that's bottom of the deck. And then I actually want that higher. So you do get to choose how you stack it, and you do not shuffle afterwards,
Like
which
Prosperity.
is, yeah. So some of them you do have to shuffle, some of them you don't. So you just got to be careful as you're going through. So that was one. So already we have the water, which is nice to have a water engrave later on. And then we did researcher, so we'll do seeker. Same type of thing. And in this case, we would go for Roxy's because that lets you go then into the small prank package. So since we already have a Quacky, we're going to rely on that boy. Lampsuse is not a rock. We already got the draw. That's once per turn, so there's no point in getting another one. So we're going to go ahead for the Roxy's.
And the Roxy's turns into like a one card link 3 in this deck, right? Because you go Meow Meow, then Doodle, and then you summon off the other guys. So you'd have a Doodle and a Roxy's off of just the
Yeah,
Roxy's.
yeah. We don't, in this current version, we don't have a link 3. But the part that's useful is that Doodle is a wind and Lampsey's is a fire, which both of the Adamancipator synchros like to have their own attributes engrave.
And then water's already kind of covered because you have the water rock dude, and you also play Halky Fibrax, I'm assuming.
Exactly. So that's why we don't bother running the water prank. I know some people have in the past. I don't think it's needed in this current build.
That's fair. That's fair.
So then this is where you gotta start making some decisions because there's like 5 different plays you could do. But the main thing I think we're gonna go ahead and do the doodle plays first to get those kind of out of the deck as well. If you can get anything that's not Adamancipator target out of the deck, that way when you go to excavate you don't whiff. You usually want to try to get those things done first. So in that case, I think we're actually going to do Hulk first. I think that'll clear off more space. So we're going to send those 2 to grave. And then this is where we can nicely chain block. So we declare Hulk and declare Supplier. As Chainlink 2, Supplier summons from hand, so it can't get ashed, and the Hulk can't get ashed. Obviously, they can Veiler Imperm, but the chain block is nice, and it does come up quite often. So then this will summon in defense, and then we summon Plague Spreader.
Why is Plague Spreader your tuner of choice in here?
Because of its ability to stack something you don't want in hand back on top. So, if you have something like a dead nib, or if you have like for instance, I'm running droplets in here. If I don't want them to set later, or they're not useful right now, I can put those back. Or if it's a Roxy's card that needs to be in the deck, then you can kind of stack those things back. And it also comes back from grave again, and it's a level 2. So having 2s and 4s and such is useful for the synchros that we use.
So, like in this hand, you're going to get the Supplier now to search. You could put whatever you search back with the Plague after you
Exactly.
already made a synchro, and then get to mill 5 and guarantee you're at least getting the Quacky Mare.
Exactly.
That's kind of insane.
Yeah. So it's really nice in helping you make sure that you don't whiff, essentially. Trying to not whiff, which we run plenty of rocks, but I mean, statistics, it's still possible to happen, just like you can have a bad opening hand in any deck. So trying to make sure that you don't have that is useful. So then Supplier is a separate chain to search. Really, it searches any Quacky. We only run Guardian, and it can't search itself.
Are all the other ones rocks as well? The spell and trap negation ones?
Yes.
Is there a world where you'd ever consider maining or siding one of those ones, the spell or the trap guy?
I've done those in the past. I've done the spell one and the trap one specifically. I used to side 2 spell ones and 2 trap ones. I was going up against a deck that I thought needed it. But the only thing that this deck really fears, in terms of the combo stage of things, is Nib. So Guardian is just too useful to be the one that you want out.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the one that's going to actually like let you combo.
Exactly. The other ones are nice. but they do all have the caveat that if you end your turn without a rock in hand, they all go to grave.
Oh, yeah, so you'd have to like hold back on resources if you're trying to make an end board full of Quacky Mares.
Exactly. So there's a world where it's useful, and I've even thought about playing around with the Quackimera spell that lets you banish the spell from grave so that they don't pop
Oh
themselves.
yeah, it
'Cause-
searches one too, right? So it's like an additional
exactly.
combi supplier, but also gives protection.
Exactly. And I've thought about putting them in, but because you want to see more rocks and less non-rocks, it just adds more spells into the deck that you don't want to possibly whiff on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's like a yes and no, like everything that you consider is like, okay, is this going to be useful enough, or is it going to clutter the deck when you're excavating? So then at this point, we would need to clear off some space, so we're probably going to go into Raptite.
Raptite's the 6.
Yeah. So you have 2 6s and 1 8 off of the Adamancipators. They all are generic. They do not require rocks or anything specific. But none of these guys, the 6s, don't really see play in any other deck for obvious reasons. Their effects just aren't super useful in another deck.
Yeah, you gotta have hella rocks to make use of them.
Yeah. So then think trying to this is again there's so many lines of play when you have a cracked hand. Half the problem ends up being needing to clear out space so that you can keep going and not like run out of room. But I think in this case we still do Raptite first. So we thankfully hit a rock, and in this case 3 spells. So this is why we try to get those other things engraved if we can. But um, in this case, we would do Doki because then we would be able to pitch the extra Roxys
There's no
to get
space on the board though, right?
Analyzer.
Is
Yeah,
Doki?
so we'll have to clear some space first.
Oh, Doki's not on summon. It's a once per turn.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane. That card's broken.
Yeah, and thankfully under D Shifter it just discards. It does not have to go to grave.
That's really important too. Does this deck have a
Yeah.
bad Adamancipator matchup? Or not Adamancipator, my bad. Fluandere's matchup.
The Flunder matchup is weird. So the deck is built to Scythe Lock and also have about 3 to 4 monster negates and or a spell or trap negate. So pretty much if we are blinding going first against a Flunder matchup and we get the end board, then the Scythe Lock is stupid. But we don't know that. But the nice thing alternatively is Flunder does struggle if it has to go against too many monster negates. And so if you know which ones to use Apo against versus a Quacky or a Crystal Wing, which will also pop the Flunder, then you're actually kind of okay. If you can keep them from getting 2 on board and they don't have the continuous spell, then they end up not having enough to go into M-Pen or to keep comboing because they have to get that next card in hand or they have to get that next normal summon. And then you end up just killing them your next turn.
So the matchup doesn't seem as bad as it is for like a lot of the meta decks.
Yeah, I was worried about it for Detroit because before this I was playtesting Striker for a while, and Flunder is again like a 50-50 difficult matchup for Striker, and so like my mind was in it at that version of stuff, but Striker's a completely different deck than this. And I was like, wait, I can just go into all of my monster negates and then ignore all the slice stuff, all the DPE stuff. Like I didn't even have to go into that stuff. So I ended up having more resources to keep comboing off the follow-up turn and then just kill them.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So it wasn't as bad as I was anticipating, thankfully. So at this point, we need to clear off some space for researcher. So we're going to synchro one of our level 8s. Because we already have a nib protector, we're going to go ahead and do Dragite.
And he's the spell trap negate, right?
Yeah, as long as there's a water engrave, which we have one, but if we didn't, by the end of the turn, we would have Hulk engrave as well. So now we can use Doki. Doki does discard for cost. And then we get our last one. This is probably where we go into Dagda.
Using Hulk and Doki.
Yeah. So that way we can chain Dagda to Analyzer. I forgot to put all those back.
Good thing we're about to shuffle. It don't matter.
Yeah.
Because you get to set the scythe first. That way you have one less like non-rock to get to, right?
Yep. Nope, not defense. 2 spell and trap. There we go. And then... No, not shuffle the hand. Okay. And thankfully we hit a rock.
Yeah, we never missing.
Pretty much. I've messed with numbers over the last handful of months when I was messing with this deck back in February. And if you have 11, there's like a 50-50 chance that you're going to whiff at least once per game. If you move it up to like 13 or 14, then you're usually only going to whiff like once per 5 games. So
yeah, we take those.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Then you suppliers once per turn or not? Does he get another search here?
It is once per turn.
Dang.
Yeah. So then I think we go into Apo at this point. Right now, this is the version that I played at Detroit. And I probably would still do this either way. Let's just use all 3.
Clear a Pella space.
Yeah. And get 3 counters. But you could put the analyzer and supplier into IP first and then get it for 2, and then it'll have a little bit of protection on it. But it's not really necessary, depending on the fact that we already have size set and we're pretty much guaranteed to go into DPE by the end of this. So we're gonna do the pranks now.
What are you gonna banish for Roxy's? The Quacky or the Exceed?
The Xseed, because we ended up not really needing it. I mean, like, I could have chained the Xseeds, and I probably should have actually. If I go back, I should have chained the Xseeds to let's do that, because that's the better play. Chain it to Apo.
Oh yeah, on the summon, give yourself the Exceed.
Yeah.
Special the other one.
Yeah. So separate chain, it'll declare.
And do you think you link those away, or is there like a line where it goes into Gallant Granite, or what?
I feel like we would still go into Granite, because at this rate we're going to end up with practically nothing in hand, and we want to have some sort of recursion, so that way we could search researcher.
Yeah, so gonna use that for follow up, basically.
Yeah.
You could also sometimes search Nib, right?
Yeah. The only instance for this deck that you would not is if you actually have your full board.
Which is looking like we're probably going to have here.
Yeah. And then how do I detach?
There you go.
There
You
we
just
go.
hover over one of the materials. And Researcher's the best one, right? Because it just requires you to control a rock.
Yeah, so the funny thing is if you do get nibbed at some point and you have not used her, then you just summon her off a nib and keep going.
Oh, yeah, because the nib token's rock.
Yep.
And then you have tuner,
Which
non-tuner. You
happens.
can still help them.
Exactly. Or you just go into Preda and make DPE. Well, after the help part. But yeah, so we're gonna to grave. And then
The banished draw seems really good, too, because you could just, like, get an extender or something off of it. Oh,
exactly.
like that. Like,
Yeah, the best freaking card. And I haven't summoned back Plague Spreader yet either, if I wanted to do that at some point. But we're going to Lampsies, which I did Lampsies for game. I think it was round 6.
that was the first match of yours that I had seen, too, actually. You went game 3 against Salad, I think.
It was Brave Salad.
Yeah, and you were going first game 3, time got called, and then you just Lampsies burn him.
Yep. I was like, okay. I mean, I think it was his choice. Or no, I don't remember. I don't remember whose choice it was at that point. Um, but it was still pretty funny. 'Cause I hate pranks so much, but here I am.
Here you are
They're-
pranking kids.
Yep, they're too worth it. The nice thing too is we're actually going to be able to leave Quacky on board.
Oh, yeah, because you search Researcher, so now you also have the reveal.
Yep. So then, based on everything, we're going to make Preda out of this.
So what's the objective to make right here? Like, is there a world where you try to make the Crystal Wing, too, or no?
Yeah. So if I had gone into Crystal Wing first, then instead of Dragite, then the Analyzer and the Quacky would have gone into a Dragite.
Can't you still technically make it here if you linked Gallant instead of Roxy's? And then bring the Plague back? And then sink 6? No. Because then you only have the 6, and there's not a way to get a 2.
Yeah,
Oh, does Signs Reborn one?
it does. So I could reborn Raptite, and then I could have linked Granite and which one? I don't think it would have mattered,
Yeah,
but two of them off so that I could bring Plague Spreader back, and then Plague Spreader and Raptite goes into Crystal Wing.
Yeah, so the end board could also end on that as well. That's kind of
Yeah.
insane. This deck has too many negates.
Yeah, and that's where like knowing what to go into is crazy because there's like 5 different lines of play, and then you also have to know, okay, do I think my opponent is going to get through this board? If so, then I want to make sure I still have stuff that I can go into, because if I like use all the resources, Crystal Wing, Dragite, everything, then I'm left with practically nothing left in here, which is why I want to put Avarice in the deck, because all of the big boys are then like pretty much engraved by the end.
Yeah, like if you were to go the route I was thinking that lets you also get Crystal Wing, you're giving up a lot of follow-up and most of your plays for next turn as well.
Exactly.
So then here's the ending, just Anaconda for DPE pass, and we're ending on DPE Scythe with triple interruptions. Or with triple monster negate, 4 monster negates actually, and then spell trap negate.
Yep.
That's dirty.
Yeah. Especially if they try to like cyclone this or called by this, then I just chain Dragite
Yeah, the only out in the game that they could have is Droplet. Every single other card loses to this board.
Yeah, because I do the DPE, so I'll go ahead and just finish it because we're almost done here. I do the DPE during the draw phase for that specific reason.
And then when you DPE, based on the board, are you popping. Like, are you going to end phase DPE pop Anaconda in itself? Or does that play in a bell too hard? I
No,
can
that
see
plays
that
into
making sense.
Bell and called by too hard. And I don't want to waste these on that. Because I don't care if they bell me the next turn, like during their turn,
Mm-hmm.
because then that's already taking cards out of their hand, on their turn because they can't bell me twice in the same turn. Uh, but no, I leave this exactly the way it is, and then during the draw phase, I send DPE and the Scythe, and I keep, or not DPE, Preda and the Scythe, and I keep DPE on board.
And
That way,
then,
during the end phase, it just destroys itself and then gets it.
yeah, and then you, what's it called? They can try to bell, try to call by, but you have all the outs.
Yeah. So end phase Quacky requires you show that you have a rock, and then you have a spell trap negate, three monster negates, a monster negate that also pops it, and then you'll have Scythe on board during the draw phase as well. So if you're going turn one and they are playing anything except Flunder or Mystic Mindburn, then you're pretty much good to make them stall a turn. You have most of the recursion, and then usually I end up just using Dragite during their turn to bounce all their cards that they were having on field, switch all these to attack, and then push for game.
Yeah, this is like at least 10k damage just sitting on board, too. So that one turn skip, it's not like. They gotta really break this board in order to have a chance. They can't just play through the
Yeah.
interruptions. They gotta remove all the monsters, because these attack steps are just
Yeah.
huge.
Because then also we have one, two, three, four different links engrave. Five once Preda goes. Six if Oppo. Normally they end up getting the Oppo negates a couple times and then just attack over her, which I don't care. They're not gonna get an 8K monster on board to attack over Oppo.
Yeah.
Under Scythe usually. So they attack her. She goes to grave. So that gives us almost five pops just off of Axis code as well.
That's so dirty. So the follow up's insane. You also have like your two in hand, DP Celestial, Dasher.
Yep, got the draw two off of them, and then at this point, pretty much the only stuff left in the deck is either one, two, three, four rocks, but because we have signs, we can just stack one of these to the top to make sure that we don't whiff.
Hell yeah. Are you down to do one more hand, like a random
Yeah,
one, and just kind of see how the deck opens and what you do with a random hand?
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let me. Should I quit or
You can
just
just hit,
reset
yeah, you
deck?
can just reset deck and it'll reset it and give you a random hand. I love Dueling
Slowly
Book solo
undo
mode.
everything.
Dueling Book solo mode is like how I love playtesting decks I don't have. Oh, this hand's
Okay, so here's.
cracked.
Yeah, this hand's not as cracked. This hand's good, but not as cracked, only because I have to normal and then special. And then if I whiff or either of
Oh,
these get
true.
hit, then I'm kind of stuck into the Hulk supplier. And then,
That's a nice safety net to have, though. Even if they both whiff, you
yeah.
still at least have like a formidable play.
Yeah, I can still do a couple things. And with the Monster Reborn, I can bring one of them back as well and do some things.
Does it ever come up with Monster Reborn where they hand trap you and then you just reborn their tuner and get to make Helk?
Oh, yeah. Um, Let me see if I can get a stupid hand. Like, where it's like that one's kind of stupid, but that one still has the parallel exceed. So like this, where like I normal this, I special her, they immediately Veiler or Imperm her. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna special him, and then hope that I get Quacky off of it. I did not. I actually whiffed, which is okay.
Do you think it's correct to Veiler Imperm the first Adamancipator?
Wait for them to activate it. half the time they don't because they think it's on summon.
Oh,
I'm like, that's
jeez.
fine. So then I end up making them go away. So like, say they did it on summon.
You just link and then reborn it with signs.
Exactly. And then that makes it even more cracked because I don't think I even activated a signs last playthrough, but you get to put one on top.
And so here, if they like hypothetically misplayed and didn't hit the level 2, if they did hit the level 2 before you declared it, you'd just be able to get whatever you wanted off that. But because you still have Wrap Tight, no matter what,
Hmm.
you're getting to get a summon guaranteed.
Yeah.
And so this line
So
right now is implying that you got Imperm Veilered Ash on the first summon, and you whiffed on the second one. So whatever end
yeah.
board you make is through an interruption plus a whiff.
Yep. So now we know that we can do her. And then so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And we actually had that in hand. Like sometimes you have this in hand, so then you don't have to make the Preda, or sometimes you have Scythe in hand, so you don't have to do the Dagda. Those are the couple times that it's nice. Having Dasher in hand's obviously annoying, but then you try to do Plague Spreader or something that you can put it back. Same thing with like Celestial. There's never a world where you're normal summoning them.
Oh
It's
yeah, 'cause
just
it
not
turns off the
something.
whole DPE engine.
Yeah, because we only run one Fusion Destiny. It's not Striker. You don't need spells engraved. If anything, we don't want to see this because we only run one of the monsters. So if you see both, then the second one's completely dead and useless because none of our cards rely on an extra card for fodder, really.
From here, where would you go to like make this end
Oh,
board? Like, just use
crap, I
the.
didn't.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Probably
Sorry.
just like analyzer. Oh, is this hand unplayable?
This is set scythe pass.
Oh, and then they just are they're gonna lead with lightning storm. It's all over.
Yeah. I did mess up. Round 8, I think it was. I was playing Gary, GGYGO, which I was literally talking to him before pairings came out. I was like, oh crap, Gary, we're playing. But, so, like, we both knew each other's decks. He knew that I was playing Rock, so I knew he was playing Striker. But I sided for game 2, and normally going second, I side out the DPE Scythe package because I want to try to interrupt whatever they did going first and then kill them as fast as possible. Because if they have a ton of interruption, like if it's Despia, then it's pretty difficult. Or like if it's Flunder and they're just clearing off your stuff over and over again with the trap and so on. Uh, and obviously Scythe isn't useful against that. But I normally side all that out. I sided out the DP package, but I forgot to side out the Scythe.
No.
Yeah. So I had Scythe in hand. I was like, oh crap, I don't have much I can do. Because Striker has 1,000,001 hand traps. But I can make Preda and then make DP and set the Scythe. I made Preda forgetting that I didn't have the DP package.
No.
Because it was round 8 and I was dead tired, and so I just made Preda set the Scythe. He didn't know what I set. He had already made a DP, so he actually popped the Scythe during his turn, which was hilarious because then he had the Striker that couldn't go into the Link summon, but it ended up not being enough to.
You forgot your DPE, and he's like, "I got you covered. I'll pop it myself."
Exactly. He was like, pop the back row. I'm like, sure. I'm
That's
like,
good.
Scythe summon? He was like, I'm like, yep. That's all I got.
That's quality. That's quality. I'd be salty if I were him. Luckily, he was still able to get it, but that could have been bad.
Yeah. But yeah, every once in a blue moon, you have a dumb hand. Like, even this hand is usable.
This feels insane. Not maybe not insane, but every hand with Doki seems like it's good.
Yeah, because it all depends on. I mean, Master Duels helped a bit because people actually know what, like, Adamancipators do more so than they did before. I mean, obviously, when it came out, and it was popular with Block Dragon. People who were playing at the time knew this deck because it was the same thing with Eldritch at the time. Like both of them were going Synchro Summon crazy, but then Black Dragon got hit, and so this deck just completely fell out of the meta. But with Master Duel, and I guess Adamancipators are cracked on Master Duel because they have Black Dragon. People actually know what some of these guys do, but they don't always read. So like I'm still able to go Doki and they let it go through. I'm like, sweet.
You didn't hand trap my card. That'd be a neg one if you did. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
So with this kind of hand where it doesn't feel like crazy, but it's still playable, what exactly would you do to play it out?
So because hand traps are crazy right now, I would probably actually go with the prank play. So I would go.
And what does supplier say exactly?
If a face-up rock you control is sent to grave.
Ah.
So in this case, it's going to be a chain blocker, so that goes to grave. And then we do Roxy's chain 1, supplier. Where'd you go? Chain 2. So then they can't respond to the Roxy's.
That's nice. So you don't auto lose to the Ash. You're also getting to get a draw, which will probably help you be able to extend, hopefully.
Yeah, optimistically. And then we would banish the extra Roxy's, probably.
You're going to draw the Lampsies and end turn. Oh, geez, that was insane. Never mind.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfectly fine. And then... Thankfully, it can summon from hand, though.
Oh, sweet.
Roxy's can. All the pranks can, so it says...
I never actually realized that.
From your hand or deck. So if... Because I have had Lampsies in hand before, and I've been like, and summon the Lampsies from hand.
That's dirty. Also, one thing I just realized, like, even if you didn't draw a good card, I didn't, like, process that you'd be able to just turn the Link 1 and the Lamp into the Link 2, do-do-doodle-do, and then special the other Roxys and overlay for Gallant to search a Adamancipator.
Yep. That's the play.
This deck is sick.
Yeah, so you just ignore these guys and you go purely into the prank play, which until supplier summons, your opponent thinks you're playing pranks.
It's really sick, too, how, like, I would have led this hand with Doki Doki, and I would have got Veiler or Impermed, and I would have just passed. Yet your line hasn't played into Veiler Imperm yet. Chain blocked where Ash is most relevant. And, like, now if they do it at any point, you still have infinitely more resources.
Yeah.
Versus where I was literally just passing.
Yeah, that's why, like, I ignored the pranks for the longest because, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I just hate prank kids. But they really do help add to the, like, non-bricking, non-just walking into, like, one negate-ness of part of the lines of this deck.
So what's the rest of the play from here? I guess you have to search off supplier, right? Does that that just grabs Guardian?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're adding Guardian.
Hey, and those mills are going to be a whiff. So now that it's shuffled, that's good.
Yeah. So then... And unfortunately, this is where you have to hope that they don't have the nib because you just weren't able to set up the negate early on. But I mean, it's the same with, like, if you're playing a hero deck or any other deck that's, like, decent but walks into a nib. You just have to be optimistic.
Luckily, that card's fallen out of favor, though. So if there are games like this where you open it, the chances are lower you get punished for it.
Yeah, and unless they side it, like, if you're going first, then there's a lower chance, because a lot of the time people are just siding it in now. And then So we declare Lampsies, declare Parallel Exceed, so we get to chain block again.
Yeah, so we still haven't been susceptible to Ash yet.
Mm-hmm. And then on a separate chain, Parallel Exceed. They could Veiler it, which did happen the other day, which I thought was funny, so it just stayed as a level 8, but I mean, at this point you already have 2 level 4s to make Granite, so you're like, okay, that's fine, I'll just use this for Dagda or Preda or something else. Like, that's fine. It's annoying, but it's whatever. That's kind of how this deck goes. Like, if you have even half the gas, you're like, that's an annoying thing to do, but I'm gonna keep going. And then definitely, this is where we hope that they were hanging on to the nib until something more scary. And then we do this.
And at this point, you haven't played into Ash at all, so getting to make the Appaloosa here, you're still not playing an Ash. Now, if you make Gallant, they have the Ash. Too bad, doesn't matter. We have the negate.
Exactly. And you don't have to waste like a Quacky on an Ash or a Veiler or something. Normally, if they Ash or Veiler and the only thing I have on board is Quacky, I let it go through because I fear the nib more than I fear the small negate.
Yeah, as long as you could still play, I'm assuming. Like, if the Veiler's going to end your turn, you might have to negate it, but otherwise, let it walk, make a worse
Yeah,
board, but not play in a nib.
exactly.
Then this gets Researcher, right? That's the one that can special
Yep.
itself.
Yeah.
I've
And
heard
because it's
crazy.
searching, that would not have lift, so that's nice. But we also will be shuffling off of that.
And even if it's a whiff, this is still a Halky Fibrax.
Yep. The weird thing is we haven't even seen in hand Small World yet, which just unbreaks any bricky hand.
Oh, it can search any extender you need at any point, right?
Yeah, so pretty much Small World, everything goes through nib. I've done the what's his name? I'm trying to remember. Yishan? Is that his name?
I have no
He's a
idea.
he's a Yugi tuber who does a lot of math and stats with Yu-Gi-Oh! And he and another guy made a GitHub code to Small World and see how it works in your deck. And minus Parallel Exceed and the DPE package, everything is Small Worldable in this deck.
That's insane. There's no way to get parallel, though?
There is one play for Parallel. You have to do Nib into Xeno Guitar into Parallel Exceed, or like vice versa. That's the only play into it. It's weird.
But there's
So
still a
then we
way, at least.
also get the draw,
Oh,
which is cracked.
jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Because then what we do is we make sure that our Raptite works. Because we take this into Raptite, special summon, Dragite back, stack, keep going. Like, yeah. This deck has very little, like, you don't want to see it in hand. Like, there's very small amount of bricky cards, which is something I really like about it as well.
The fact you get to draw so much is sick, too. It's like,
Yeah,
just getting to see these crazy extenders makes the hand go from, like, kinda gas to insane.
especially because, like, we draw, but it's like 3 times, which to someone who side decks like Droll is not, like, scary enough for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't actually hinder many of your plays.
Yeah,
If I can somehow draw you early, it stops Roxy's from resolving, but that's about it.
yeah.
And then here, what rock do you stack?
We're gonna stack. Trying to think. Probably. Yeah, we want to do Seeker because we're probably gonna go into Leonite just to see if we can extend some more. Mm,
Oh yeah, because Reptile can summon any. It's not limited to non-tuners like the main
yeah.
deck monsters are.
Also, the sad part is that it does summon in defense. So if you want to summon out Nib off of it, you have to summon it in defense. Though you can pitch Nib for Nib off of Doki, and then summon it in attack, which I have done to kill.
Oh, that's
Like
kind of
it,
dirty.
yeah. How do I deck that?
Or you could just
It's not.
special it and then put it to top deck from there, from the field.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way to do it from deck to top deck on DB.
You would think they'd have that option with all these options here.
But then yeah, right there, T deck.
Yeah. So good thing we did it, because our only other option would have been Nib, which we could have used, but it wouldn't be ideal, and it's not a tuner.
Yeah, it's link fodder, but that's about it.
Yeah. Whiff.
No. My first whiff of this combo.
I think
That's
that's the second one. Didn't we
uh,
whiff at the beginning? Oh no,
yeah, that was a different
that was
hand.
the other hand. That was the other hand. That's okay. We go into Hulk. This is another reason Plague Spreader is good, because we have so much in hand at this point.
Oh yeah, the next one is guaranteed to hit.
Yeah. Mm.
Is there a case to play Baron de Fleur in this deck?
I've played it. The extra deck is hella tight. I play tested it after the regional instead of Crystal Wing,
Hmm.
and 8s and 6s are just a lot nicer than a 10. Like, you can make a 10, no problem, but not as frequently. And when it comes to the current meta, I like Crystal Wing better because, like Crystal Wing paired with Dragite, because once they're done, they're not done. Like Baron, once you've used it on field, it's done.
That's true. It's just like a negate every turn versus a negate now.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I make a Crystal Wing early on to prevent a nib, then it's not there only to stop the nib, and that's it. And now it's just a dead body on board.
The line here is to make the other level 6, right? The
Yeah.
fire dude. And do you ever leave these on the field? Because they have on-field effects, right? Like one of them's DD Crow.
Yeah. I try to leave this guy on field, especially if I've gone into the prank play, then I know I have a fire engrave. Or if I had to use Almirage, then I know I have a fire engrave, because they require their attribute to be engrave.
Mhm.
And he's a monster reborn for a rock.
Oh, that's kind of
So depending on what they're doing, I normally use him in the draw phase, because it's only during your opponent's turn. But I'll use him in the draw phase to either summon Raptite, if I have a Wind Engrave, so then that is the DD Crow, or I'll summon a Quacky, so then I get a extra monster, negate, and pop. Or if I end up not having to use any of it because their hand was stupid, then I'll either summon Dragite to get a draw during their turn.
And so you can Guardian negate and then reborn the same Guardian and negate again, right?
Yeah, none of the Guardians are once per turn, so I've actually
That's
had a board
dirty.
of 3 Guardians and then like Dragite and Crystal Wing, which
Guardian
sounds like
SDK.
a yeah, pretty much, because they're also 19, so they're pretty high up there.
And then here do you Plague first to guarantee a mill?
Mm,
Or do you risk it for the biscuit? Because you could put
nah,
Analyzer and then get your last Adamancipator, but then you have to clear space to be able to mill.
that's not the issue. The issue is Leonite adds to hand.
Oh, he adds?
Yeah, so really in
Oh.
this case, you hope to hit, she was specialed. He was specialed off of Raptite. So you hope to hit either a Seeker or a Signs.
But here, either if we don't, there's still like other cards to grab for follow up too.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna end with like a good bit of interruptions, but like also a full grip of cards in hand.
Yeah. So like hopefully the goal with like a suboptimal hand is to end with enough interruption that like they can't fully OTK you or like set up a crazy board, and then you can pretty much like just go through their stuff, and then usually like bounce everything, and then access code and attack with both for game. But let's see what. So we
Best
got
deck.
Seeker, which he didn't summon. He didn't special from hand, so that's the main thing. He already used his effect, but he didn't special from hand yet. So we can still go into a couple different options. So to hand.
It seems like the option tree is really large too, because like even if this whiffed, you'd have the ability to use Plague Spreader and then 3 other monsters. So you could dag to Scythe, but then like you also could just put up 2 Synchro Interruptions, and it's like, how do you know what's stronger in any given matchup?
Yeah. Like you kind of have to look at your opponent and be like, does this person know what they're doing or do they not?
And
Well,
did they
like,
draw Droplet or not? Because if I could just
yeah,
Scythe
like
them, I win.
yeah, what type of board are they playing? Like you you get into that weird like trying to guess what your opponent is like playing just based on how they look uh to figure out your end board because your end board's not this doesn't have to be the same thing every single time.
It
Like
seems very
it's
not cookie
crazy.
cutter at all.
Yeah, cuz like you could end with Crystal Wing and Dragite, and that would be Spell Trap, Monster, 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 Monster. Or you could end with Scythe, DPE, and Apo. But then all of these guys are like kind of gone, so some of your recursion is limited only based on like you can't go into the synchros.
Hmm.
So you end up kind of having to judge a bunch of stuff. But in this case, I would probably end on the synchro heavy board. That way, uh, it feels a little bit more secure because the monsters are also bigger. So if they're able to get through the interruption to an extent, they're probably not going to kill them off because Scythe and Preda and Dagda, they're all like pretty low in terms of attack and defense.
They're all some wimpy boys.
Yeah.
So the 4th monster negate has entered the stage. And so then here, do you plague back or do you keep the level 6 guy and just have him reborn Raptite?
Yeah, I think in that case, because you have to consider not overplaying your hand. Um, like it's definitely a big which one's better, mostly because you don't have a Quacky engrave. If you had a Quacky engrave, you would just leave Leonite. That way you could reborn the Quacky.
But since you don't, maybe it's right to make another 8.
Yeah. Then that's normally, yeah, what I go for. Because then you can declare, put Analyzer back, so you know that you're top decking her.
In a,
Um,
in a hypothetical where this line came up a lot, I feel like Formula Synchron seems like it would be crazy right here. Tag out with help, get
yeah,
a draw, then make a level 8.
yep. There's so many versions of this extra deck that I've ran in the past just for those types of lines. Like, I mean, like I can talk all day about the different things. Like I've run Wonder Magician that before I got the DPE package. That way you use Hulk, go into Wonder Magician, pop the Scythe.
Oh, and then you can Wonder Magician Scythe and
Baron.
Baron too. That's
Yep.
dirty.
Yeah, that's what I used to do with this deck before I got the DPE stuff. But the DPE stuff takes up 2 monster spots, so that's Baron Wonder Magician or
Hmm.
whatever you want it to be. Same thing with like the pranks. So you could
Yeah, the pranks take
cut the
another
prank
2
package
up.
out. Yeah, to cut the pranks out and run more Hulk targets. But then do you just brick more often? Like it's so many options. There was a guy at Detroit who was running essentially what one of my older builds was, which he was running Wonder Magician and Nat Beast.
That beast sounds kind of cool though. You've like played
Yeah.
E-Telly and a recover or something? Or how are you? What's the tuner that's Earth?
Um. So you run either. the level 1 Tenyi
Ooh,
and
Ehara.
summon it off Hulk, or if you open with it, it just summons if there's no monsters on board. Or you can main deck Bell.
Oh, then with
I mean,
Doki Doki and
yep,
Bell.
yep.
That's strong
So
too.
there's a couple options. There's a level 3 Earth Rock that's been ran for it sometimes. A Sentry Soldier. It summons itself back from grave if there's only rocks on field. So you can use that to go into Nat Beast with the Seeker and Analyzer. So there's a couple different ways to get into Nat Beast that are consistent enough. The Tenyu one's probably the most consistent version because you run a lot of fours, so it's easier to do the Tenyu plus one of these guys.
Yeah.
But what I do now is I just side deck anti-spell.
And then you don't have to give up the extra deck slot for it.
Exactly. And apparently anti-spell flipped on a DPE player, not DPE, Despia player, makes them pass turn.
Oh yeah, it seems like a GG against them for sure. That once you
Yeah.
said Naturia Beast, my brain started just going thinking like, you make Nat Beast against Despia, they probably just fold.
Yeah, unless they are able to use Super Poly, because the Nat Beast can't chain to it.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's the issue the dude was running into at Detroit was he said people were just imperming the Nat Beast.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah, that's why you have Dragite on board to negate the imperm.
damn. But yeah, if you have the Dragite, that should probably be game. If you have the way to protect the Nat Beast against a lot of decks, that probably closes games.
Yeah, it used to be the big play for this. It was try to end on Nat Beast and Scythelock, and then you're just like extra game.
So from here, this just makes Dragite, right? And that's the end of the turn for the most part. I don't think
Yeah,
there's another extender.
because of what's currently being run, yeah. Otherwise, this would be able to go into something the next turn if we were running something in the extra deck. But like I said, it's hella tight. The only thing I've changed after Detroit was I took out IP and I put in Underworld Goddess.
Ooh, I like
I'm
that
pretty
card a
sure
lot.
I'm pretty sure I'm sticking with it because if I'd had her, I would have won one of the games that I lost at Detroit.
And this was cool because it's like a cracked end board, and the hand wasn't good at first.
Yeah.
This was a hand where I would have led with Doki, and I would have got Veilered, and I would have passed. And the line you took ended up with like Appaloosa before you would really get hit by any hand trap. You had two RNG checks where you got to like draw for a card, and if it's good, the combo goes crazy. And I think we whiffed off of one of the mills too.
We did.
So, is there anything else you want to talk about this deck before we head out?
Let me see what I can pull up the side. So the main thing with the side, well, this is the old version. Let me pull up the version that I
Adamancipator
did.
number 13. How many do you have?
Oh no, that's just the what I got at Detroit.
Oh. I was like, damn, you just
Yeah.
got 12 other ones on here?
No, that's the one that I got. This is the playtesting one. So the only thing, I don't think Monster Reborn has been worth it. I didn't see it the whole day at Detroit, and clearly it didn't make a difference. And it just adds another spell to whiff off of. Like, it's nice if your DPE gets belled, because then you can Monster Reborn it, but like it just never even ended up in my hand. But the main thing was at Detroit, I was not running Lancia in the side. I just sided out the whole Scythe DPE stuff, which made it easy because then it's 4 cards going second that you know you're taking out.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, unless I thought that they might walk into a nib, I took out one of the extra nibs as well because they're mostly in there for Small World. Small World, despite the fact that we did not see it this whole time, is cracked in this deck. Like, it is a big reason that my bricky hands or my mediocre hands become cracked. Like, if you see any of these guys extra, like 2 researchers in hand, immediately push it off a Small World, search Guardian. That way you start with that and you start with the Nib negate. Or if you already have that in hand, like search for Parallel Exceed or something. Like it's truly and utterly cracked as a card. Not every deck can play it, but if like all your links are there, like you have a way to get to every card, it's definitely a go-to card.
You added the Lancey on the side now, though. Is that for stuff like Fluanderies when Scythe is dead? You just board that in?
Yeah. I should have had that Detroit, um, but I didn't. Thankfully, I didn't need it. But I think with the with the surge of Despia and everything that's not Despia is pretty much what it seems like it's going to come down to. At least until the ban list comes out. Uh, I think that it's going to be useful because I think decks that don't worry about Despia as much, like Flunder, are gonna start coming back in popularity because then they can like barrier statue, and then Despia does nothing under barrier statue.
Yeah,
So
it's really hard for that deck to beat a statue.
yeah, so I decided to put it back in the side because I think that I'm still not sure if I'm going to Columbus, but if I do, I think that there might be more Flunder than what I saw at Detroit. But these are all for the Despia and the Flunder spells and traps that they use as quickly as possible, and then pretty much just try to negate their stuff. I was running evenly, but I want to try to clear off everything and try to still somehow make game if I'm able to against a full board, like a 10 Sword Soul board is kind of similar to one of these end boards where they've got like 5 monsters and they all
Mm.
have negates or effects. So I'd rather do this than evenly at this point because I even lead a Despia player and they ended up after all of their chains with a Masquerade on board still.
Yeah, they just like keep branded in red, then they get the fusion on your turn too. Like evenly feels kind of mid against that deck a little bit.
Yeah, and that deck was the only other deck that I lost against. It was the guy that got second, actually.
Damn.
So
So you had a good
yeah,
run.
yeah, yeah, it was hard. But yeah, that's it. Do you have any other questions?
I think I've asked all my questions. Thank you for coming
Okay.
on though. I had a good time.
Yeah, yeah. I love talking deck building. Like anything like this is like that's I do a lot of that on my Twitch channel. I'm trying to do a bit more on my YouTube channel as well. But yeah, like deck building, deck construction, like theory talk. That's like a huge part of why I like Yu-Gi-Oh.
Hell yeah. We'll have to do something together again then. This was fun.